So this is a story time about how I became best friends with the girl that my boyfriend cheated on me with. So when I met this guy, we'll call him Bronson, there was an immediate attraction. He was a Sagittarius, so he was super charming, life of the party, and it didn't take long for us to start talking. Well, it turned out he wasn't totally honest with me, and he had a girlfriend. So I cut him off and didn't think twice about it. About a year later, though, he came back into my life. He reached out after his breakup with his girlfriend, and he asked if we could give things a real chance. Knowing the connection that we had, I said yes. And things were almost too perfect. We were taking cute photos for Instagram together. It didn't take long for him to move in. And we spent so much time together. He even talked about marriage with me in front of his mom. So it felt like things were going pretty smoothly. Until one night we were going to bed, his phone started blowing up. I grabbed it and it was a notification from a guy named Brad, which I thought was super weird. The texts were asking where he was and what he was doing. And eventually I just decided to pick up the phone. And it was a girl on the other end. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Insta. Hey guys, so here's part 2 to becoming friends with the girl that my boyfriend cheated on me with. When there was a girl on the other end, I was like, what is this? And why are you calling my boyfriend's phone? And she was confused. She was like, boyfriend? I thought you were just being his supportive friend. It turns out him and his ex were still seeing each other. I was pissed and woke him up. And he had the nerve to try to tell me that she was being the crazy one. Like, obviously you've been seeing both of us. We're not that stupid. And she even sent me the screenshots to prove it. And he still had the nerve to deny it. I kicked him out of my house and we didn't talk for a while until one day he managed to work his way back in. I, being stupid, forgave him and decided to try things again. It happens to the best of us. Things seemed okay again, but he told me during our time apart he was couch surfing and he didn't actually have a place to stay, like he was just homeless. So I offered to let him live with me again. That night that he moved back in, I received a call from his ex. We'll call her Ashley. And Ashley goes, no, he's been living with me this entire time. Stay tuned for the last part and follow me on Instagram. Hey guys, here's part 3 to becoming best friends with the girl that my boyfriend cheated on me with. So that's when it all clicked that this man just couldn't ever be honest with me at all. From day one, and that there was no way that he was ever going to be honest with me again. So we might as well let things go down in flames. I told Ashley that she was welcome to come over. So she knocked on my door and I let her in while Bronson was still sleeping. And she walked straight to the back and woke him up. They immediately started fighting and running around my house, yelling and arguing with each other. I was so done at that point that I just sat in my kitchen with my cup of coffee and just watched. I just couldn't believe that I let a man get the best of me like this. And the best of both of us. Both of us were 100% done. No more. And we decided to become each other's support system to avoid getting back together with him. Nothing brings two girls together like a hate for a man. Now, not only is she my good friend, but she is also my roommate. Sometimes toxic men can bring two people together. Follow me on Instagram for more content, and if you have a story, DM me. Story time, how I found out my substitute teacher was actually my biological father. So of course I went to school for our usual class and our teacher wasn't there. So we had a substitute that day and I could have sworn that I recognized him, but I couldn't tell from where. There would be times during the lecture where I would look up and he would just be looking at me. I felt like there was a weird connection between the two of us, but I didn't exactly know where to place it. Since it was the last hour of the day, he asked me to stay after class. I immediately got the creeps and said no, I had to catch my bus. And I hadn't seen him for weeks after that. Some days later, I noticed a for sale sign on my neighbor's yard. So during their open house, I decided to peek out my window and see who was visiting. And there he was, my substitute teacher. I got the creeps and I just ran upstairs to focus on something else. Once the house sold and the move-in trucks came in, I saw that it was my substitute teacher that actually bought it. I was terrified but still felt this weird connection. That's when my mom offered for us to bring cookies over to his house. She said it was the neighborly thing to do, so that's what we did. So we went to go knock on his door. Stay tuned for part 2 and add me on Instagram. Okay, so part 2 to finding out my substitute teacher was actually my biological father. So the whole interaction between my mom and him was so odd. He was clearly high, so my mom just set the cookies down on his front door. And we just left. Many nights after that, I just felt like someone was always watching me. I constantly got the creeps. And I would just notice like little stuff going missing. But I never thought it was that big of a deal. But a few days later, this man invited us over for a dinner, and my mom made me go, and it was just as strange. Like, I could tell that my mom was so uncomfortable. I asked to be excused to go to the bathroom, and once he showed me where it was, I did a little bit of snooping. In a room close to his bathroom, there was pictures of us. Like my mom and I, and baby pictures of me, and also recent pictures that we were completely unaware of. I ran downstairs and grabbed my mom and told her that we had to leave. She agreed, and once I told her about the pictures, we filed a police report. The police told me he was my biological father, and he was in the process of searching for me for 3 years. And to this day, my mom has still not talked to me about the situation. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. Add me on Instagram, and if you have a story you'd like to share, DM me. Story time. Someone tried to murder me on a school trip. So during my senior year, I started talking to this guy that we can call Tyler. And we all had to go on a school trip for a competition. During this, we had to stay in a hotel room and we were all assigned partners. Well, I didn't know this at the time, but I was actually assigned Tyler's ex-girlfriend. We can call her Penny. And when I found out she was his ex, I was like, you know what? Not a big deal. I'm probably just overthinking it, but she had a reputation for being psychotic. And I mean psychotic. Since we were all in close quarters, it didn't take her long to figure out that I was talking to her ex, and she went crazy on me. She basically threatened me by saying that if she ever saw me with him again, I wouldn't be coming home to my family. I still honestly didn't take her that seriously until the next day she saw us kissing, and she left the hotel room to buy throwing knives for when I got back. So when I reached the hotel room that day, she was yelling at me, threatening me, and then she took out one of the knives. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Insta. Part 2 to me almost getting murdered on my school trip. So when Penny took out one of the knives, she literally threw it right at me. Somehow it only managed to land 5 inches from me and I was okay. So I took off running out of the hotel room. I immediately went to our director, and literally because her parents fund most of the band stuff, he straight up couldn't care less. I told my mom, who happened to work with the superintendent's wife, so she told her the whole story and gave my mom his phone number. Let's just say they were suspended and the teacher was fired. She swore up and down that her and Tyler were going to get back together, but it's been 3 years later and she's still crazy and he still hates her, and I'm still with him. So I guess the moral of the story is please take it seriously if someone threatens you, especially if it's a crazy ex. Love you guys. Follow my Insta and DM me if you have your own story that you want to share. Story time, how I catfished the girl that my brother-in-law was cheating with. So my brother-in-law always had a bit of a cheating reputation, and he definitely gave me the worst vibe. He had even cheated on my sister before, but they forgave each other and worked things out. Whatever. But I knew that something was up once rumors started to fly again, and so did my sister. And there was one particular girl on his phone that was very sus. So my sister got the number and we decided to set her up. We didn't really know how much she knew or if she was aware that he was married, so we just pretended to be him and asked her to come over. And since they had been hooking up, she was down to come over. So we sat and waited, and she walked in expecting to see my brother-in-law, but instead she got my sister and I. When I say she was shocked, I mean she was shocked. She wasn't furious or anything, however, she kept acting weird like it was all a big joke. She was like, oh my god, I had no idea he was married, which you can't blame her for everything, it takes two to tango. However, I still think you should be aware of who you're seeing. But she agreed to confront him with us. Follow me on Instagram and stay tuned for part 2. Part 2 on how I catfished the girl that my brother-in-law was cheating with. So he was still at the house, just hanging out upstairs, had no idea what was going on downstairs when we invited over the girl. And once she agreed to confront him, we decided to walk on upstairs. So she walked up and literally called this man by his first name. And he denied knowing her. Like, we were in shock. Like, we caught you. Like, here she is. How are you even going to deny that you know her when she's calling you by your first name? But she just kept laughing and he just kept denying it. It was extremely uncomfortable and super weird. She literally knew everything about him and even walked over and tried to be like all cutesy with him. And still, he denied. So we just ended up making her leave, and I literally fought this man. My sister was upset and shocked, but I was way more furious than she was. It's one thing for people to hurt you, but not the people that you love. Luckily, she is done and no longer with him. At the end of the day, we need to know our self-worth and set high standards for the people that we're dating. Follow the girl that sent me the story, and add me on Instagram and DM me if you have a story of your own. Every time my boyfriend tried to kill me so he could have my life insurance money. So I decided to go on Tinder to look for some potential matches, and lo and behold, a guy named Jared was there. He was adorable, he was charming, and we had multiple cell phone calls before deciding to meet. We met at Red Lobster and it was like fireworks. He was so romantic and looked like a 6-foot-something cowboy. He took me to a wildlife bird refuge after dinner and I instantly fell for him. We dated for months and everything was mostly good. However, he was just very pressuring for things. And I didn't want to take things too fast. I was 21 and he was 31. Eventually, this just gave me some bad vibes, so I decided to cut off the relationship. But a few months later, he called me saying that he couldn't forget me. He had been married before and his wife had passed away, so I felt very sympathetic towards him. He had a really nice job, making over $150K a year, and he said that all he wanted to do was take care of me and my child. So I moved in and things were good again. I would wake up in the morning, he would make me coffee, and I would help him with his kids. But I noticed that my weight was starting to go down. And that's when I realized he was putting something in my coffee. Follow me on Insta and stay tuned for part 2. Story time. I found out my boyfriend cheated on me with his aunt. So this guy that I had a really big crush on at my school had just recently broken up with his girlfriend. And so I was kind of just there to comfort him and be a shoulder to cry on. You know the drill. Pretty soon he asked me to be his girlfriend. We dated for a total of 6 or 7 months. And during this time, it was kind of insane with the gaslighting and how controlling he would get with me. He would literally say that he would kill himself if I ever left him. And I had been around his aunt a few times and gotten a weird vibe, but nothing super significant. But one morning, around the end of our 7th month mark, I woke up to so many missed texts and calls from his younger brother, with text and picture proof of him sleeping with his aunt. After all of this, I confronted him and he still denied it, even with the proof. I just asked him how he could ever do something like that to me. And then he admitted to it, but said that it wasn't cheating. We were officially over after that. I messaged him to check on him one time, and he responded with, "I never loved you, please stay blocked." If you want to know where I got this jewelry from, check out Interstellar Jewelry, linked below. And if you have a story that you would like to share too, add me and DM me on Instagram. Every time, our house had to be cleansed of a demonic presence. I had just gotten out of a relationship that I had been in for 5 years. I had to pack up my stuff from his house, move out, and I was mentally all over the place. One of my friends that I'll either tag below or in the comments had just bought a house during this time, so it was kind of perfect for me to move in with her. The house was beautiful, had very cottage vibes, but there was something about the shed in the back, and I'll insert a picture. It was filled with religious symbols and Mod Podge all over the wall. There was lights in there like people were trying to grow, and it just seemed like a lot of teenage experimentation happened back there. But overall, the house was nice and was totally checked out by the inspector. Soon after I started to move in, that's whenever spots would occur on the ceiling. It was happening a lot on my side of the house as if there was water damage. However, we didn't know where the water damage was coming from and she had had the house inspected. This is when she started to have extremely vivid nightmares that bled over into the day. She would wake up and see shadowy figures hanging over her. I kind of just thought she was tired due to night shift at first, but that's when I got my first sleep paralysis episode. It gets way worse, so stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Storytime part 2 of our house being cleansed of a demonic presence. So my roommate's nightmares and hallucinations were getting worse and worse. When she would drive home from work, she one time literally thought someone was hurting themselves in the car next to her, and then would walk into the house and see something standing over her. But again, we just thought she was tired due to night shift. However, a few days later, I ended up waking up and not being able to move my body. All I could do was look around the room and I felt someone petting me. All I could do was lay there while this thing talked to me and pet my head. But I could never see her. And I know it was a her because it was a female's voice. This had me freaked out and not wanting to sleep for days. But soon I was able to get over it and forget it. One night whenever I came back with one of my guy friends, we walked into the house and from the back we heard, "Hey, are there any people here?" We both just looked at each other like, "Oh my god, did you actually just hear that?" Except I heard it in a female voice and he heard it in a male voice. He told me to stay right there and he scanned the area to make sure that there weren't any people there. And there weren't. We knew this was getting bad and we were going to have to call someone. So my roommate called up someone that she knew that did house exorcisms. The worst is yet to come. Add me on Instagram. I'm part 3 of our house having to be cleansed of a demonic presence. So my friend reached out to a lady that she knew and told her the situation, told her about the house, and the lady was very intuitive. She knew that we were not going through very good times in our life and that there was probably something here feeding off of us. On top of that, it was gaining energy from a negative male presence. And she mentioned that potentially this male presence could have been doing drive-bys, just like my ex had been doing. She said she'd be there in a few days, but that the rotting of the house was going to get worse. A few days later, on a day that I know that my ex came by, the entire roof in one of the rooms collapsed, and I'll insert a picture. So she was right. By the time it got to her coming, she was able to examine the house and give us a full assessment. I guess whatever teenage experimentation was going on in the shed ended up letting in something and then was feeding off of our weakness. Not only that, but the spirits were watching my roommate from her window looking into her mirrors, which faced her bed, so make sure you never have mirrors facing your bed. The exorcism included absolutely everything you can think of, and the issues we were having stopped for the most part after this. Stay safe and follow me on Instagram for more content.